In the chilling aftermath of a devastating house fire in a quiet Swedish town, I woke in a hospital bed, haunted by the acrid smell of smoke and my father's tearful claim that my mother perished in the blaze. But a cryptic whisper from a police officer, "Ma'am, are you ready for the truth?" unraveled everything I thought I knew. As I grappled with my father's evasive grief and a mysterious letter from my mother, I uncovered a web of lies that suggested the fire was no accident. What secrets was my mother hiding, and how far will I go to expose the truth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you doubted everything about your family? Like, subscribe, and let's dive into my story. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not the sterile sting of antiseptic, though that was there too, but smoke, bitter, clinging, woven into my hair like a ghost that wouldn't leave. I woke in a hospital bed in Uppsala, Sweden, the room too white, the lights too sharp. My throat burned, raw from the tubes they'd pulled out hours before. I tried to move, but my body felt like it belonged to someone else, heavy and disobedient. A steady beat pulsed from a machine beside me, tethering me to life. My father, Eric Lindstrom, sat by the bed, his broad shoulders hunched, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, his blonde hair disheveled, his blue eyes rimmed red. "You're awake," he said, voice cracking, reaching for my hand with a grip too tight, like he was afraid I'd slip away. "Your mother, she didn't make it. You're the only one who survived." The words should have shattered me, but they didn't. They hung in the air, heavy but distant, like a storm I could see but not feel. I stared at the ceiling, counting the tiles, waiting for tears that wouldn't come. Why me? Why not her? Eric squeezed my hand again, his thumb tracing circles on my skin. "We'll get through this. I'll take care of everything." His voice was soft, practiced, the way it always was when he wanted to smooth over cracks in our family. But there was something off, a pause too long, a flicker in his eyes that didn't match his grief. I turned my head and saw it. A small woolen shawl, deep green, folded neatly on the chair beside his coat. It was my mother's, the one she wore every winter, claiming it kept her warm even when the Nordic cold seeped into our bones. I could almost smell her lavender perfume woven into the threads. The last time we spoke, we'd fought. Something small about me staying out too late with friends. "You're too trusting," she'd said, adjusting that shawl in the hallway mirror. "The world isn't as kind as you think." I'd scoffed, and now she was gone, her words echoing like a warning I'd ignored. A knock at the door broke the silence. Eric straightened, his face shifting to something colder, more controlled. "Come in," he said, his tone clipped. A woman in a navy blazer stepped inside, her boots clicking on the tile. She was maybe 40, with sharp gray eyes and a badge clipped to her belt. "Ms. Lindstrom," she said, her voice steady but gentle. "I'm Detective Inspector Hannah Berg. I'm so sorry for your loss, but there's something you need to know." Eric's jaw tightened. "She's barely awake. Can't this wait?" His voice was sharp, a warning wrapped in concern. Hannah didn't flinch. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on mine. "Ma'am, are you ready for the truth?" The question sank into me, cold and heavy. The truth about what? I rasped, my voice barely a whisper. She leaned in, her voice low, almost a whisper. "About your father. There's more to this fire than you've been told." The room seemed to shrink, the air too thick to breathe. My heart monitor spiked, a jagged rhythm cutting through the silence. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. Eric stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is inappropriate," he snapped. "She's grieving." Hannah's gaze didn't waver. "This is an active investigation. We have reason to believe the fire wasn't an accident. Your father is a person of interest." The words hit like a slap, sharp and disorienting. "Arson? My father?" I shook my head, the movement small but desperate. "No, you're wrong. He wouldn't." Hannah's expression softened, but her voice stayed firm. "I know this is hard. But think back. Any arguments between your parents? Financial troubles? Did your mother ever seem afraid? I wanted to scream that she was wrong, that Eric was just a grieving widower. But memories flickered. My mother, Astrid, sitting at our kitchen table in our small Uppsala home, staring out the window at the snow, her fingers twisting that green shawl. The way she'd go quiet when Eric raised his voice. The way she'd lock her bedroom door at night. I'd always thought it was just their way, the strain of a long marriage. But now, with Hannah's words sinking in, those moments felt like clues I'd missed. "I don't know," I whispered, my hands clutching the hospital blanket. They fought sometimes, but he wouldn't hurt her. Hannah nodded, like she'd expected that answer. "We'll talk more when you're stronger. For now, just be careful." She glanced at Eric, then left, her boots echoing down the hall. Eric sat back down, his face softening into something almost tender. "They're grasping at straws. Don't let them scare you. We're family. That's what matters." His words were warm, but they felt like ice sliding down my spine. When he left to get coffee, I noticed the shawl again, its green threads catching the light. I reached for it, my fingers trembling, and pressed it to my face. It still smelled like her. A nurse entered, her expression hesitant. "This was left for you," she said, handing me a small envelope. "It was with your mother's things. She left a note saying to give it to you when it was safe." My breath caught. My name was written on the front, in Astrid's elegant script. I didn't open it. Not yet. The weight of it felt like it could crush me. That night, the hospital room felt like a tomb, the silence broken only by the hum of machines and the distant footsteps of nurses in the hall. I sat up, the thin blanket slipping to my waist, my hands trembling as I held the envelope. My name, written in Astrid's careful, elegant loops, seemed to glow in the dim light, a beacon in the sterile darkness. The words, "when it's safe," echoed in my mind, a warning that grew heavier with every heartbeat. I traced the letters, my fingers lingering on the curves of her handwriting, as if touching it could bring her back. My throat tightened, the grief I'd held at bay threatening to spill over. I tore open the envelope, the sound sharp and final. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Astrid's handwriting hurried but unmistakable, and a small brass key taped to the bottom. The letter read, "My light, if you're reading this, I'm gone and I'm so sorry. I tried to shield you from this, but your father isn't who you think. He's in debt, dangerous debt, to people who don't forgive. The fire, I think he planned it. There's a safe in my studio, behind the blue painting. The key will open it. Find what's inside before he does. Don't trust him, and don't let him silence you. I love you always, Mom." My hand shook so violently the paper slipped to the floor, the key clattering against the tile. I stared at it, my chest tight, my breath shallow. A safe? Dangerous debt? The words didn't fit the father I'd known, the man who'd taught me to skate on the frozen lake behind our house, who'd carried me on his shoulders during midsummer festivals, laughing under the endless Swedish twilight. But then I saw the other Eric, the one who'd snap at Astrid over forgotten bills, who'd disappear in the garage for late-night phone calls, his voice low and sharp, who'd grown distant, his warmth replaced by something hard and unreadable. I remembered our last family dinner, a week before the fire. Astrid had been quiet, her fork moving slowly through her potatoes, her eyes avoiding Eric's. He'd been drinking heavily, his wine glass refilled 3 times before dessert, his laughter too loud, too forced. I caught him staring at her, not with love but with something colder, like he was measuring her worth. I'd looked away, pretending not to notice, because that's what I always did, ignore the cracks in our family, hoping they'd mend themselves. Now, those cracks were chasms, and I was falling through them. The key felt like it was burning my palm as I picked it up. Astrid's studio, a small shed in our backyard, was her sanctuary, filled with canvases of stormy seas and quiet forests. I could picture the blue painting she mentioned, a watercolor of the Baltic Sea. its waves crashing in hues of indigo and gray, a piece she'd painted after a rare family trip to Gotland. What was in that safe? Proof of Eric's debts? Evidence of something worse? My mind raced, piecing together fragments. Her locked bedroom door, the way she clutched that green shawl when Eric raised his voice, the whispered arguments I'd overheard but never understood. I tucked the letter under my pillow as the door creaked open. Eric stepped inside, a paper coffee cup in his hand, his face softening into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You should be sleeping," he said, his voice too gentle, like he was trying to lull me into complacency. "You need your strength." "I'm fine," I lied, my fingers curling around the key beneath the blanket. He sat beside me, his gaze lingering on the shawl draped over the chair. For a moment, I thought he'd noticed the envelope, but he just sighed, rubbing his face. "They're trying to tear us apart," he said, his voice low, conspiratorial. "The police, they don't understand what we've been through. Don't let them fill your head with nonsense." His words were meant to comfort, but they felt like a cage closing around me. I nodded, my throat tight, and he patted my hand before leaving. Alone again, I pressed the shawl to my face, inhaling the faint trace of lavender. "What were you afraid of, Mom?" I whispered. The key in my hand felt like a promise and a threat. I knew I couldn't stay here, waiting for answers to find me. I had to go back to the house, to the ruins, to whatever Astrid had left behind. But facing Eric, seeing the truth in his eyes, made my stomach churn. Could I do this? Could I betray the only family I had left? The night stretched on, the hospital's sterile quiet pressing against me. I clutched the key tighter, my resolve hardening. Astrid had trusted me with this. I wouldn't let her down. 2 weeks later, I was discharged, my body still aching but my mind sharper, driven by the weight of Astrid's letter. Eric drove me to his new apartment in Stockholm, a sleek, sterile place that smelled of fresh paint and felt nothing like the cozy wooden home we'd lost in Uppsala. The city's lights glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting cold shadows across the polished floors. "You'll be safe here," Eric said, opening the door with a smile that seemed rehearsed, his blue eyes scanning me like he was searching for cracks in my facade. I nodded, clutching the green shawl, the key now hidden in its folds, a secret pulsing like a second heartbeat. The apartment was all sharp angles and minimalistic furniture, a far cry from our old house with its creaky floors and Astrid's vibrant paintings on every wall. Eric had hung new art, abstract pieces in cold blues and grays that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. He watched me as I unpacked my small bag, his eyes lingering too long, like he could sense the rebellion brewing beneath my silence. "You need anything, you tell me," he said, his tone too careful, too controlled. I forced a smile, my stomach twisting, the key's weight grounding me. That night, when the apartment was quiet and Eric's bedroom door clicked shut, I slipped out, my bare feet silent on the hardwood. I called a taxi, my hands trembling as I gave the driver the address of our old house in Uppsala. The hour-long drive felt endless, the dark countryside blurring past, the key in my pocket growing heavier with every mile. When we arrived, the ruins loomed under moonlight, a jagged skeleton of blackened beams and ash. The air was sharp with the scent of charred wood, a bitter reminder the night I'd nearly lost everything. I stood frozen for a moment, the shawl wrapped around my shoulders, its familiar softness the only thing keeping me from turning back. Astrid's studio, a small shed in the backyard, had survived, its walls scorched with standing, a defiant relic amidst the destruction. I crept inside, my flashlight cutting through the darkness, revealing overturned easels and canvases coated in soot. The air smelled of paint and smoke, a haunting mix that made my chest ache. The blue painting hung crookedly on the wall, its watercolor waves seeming to ripple in the dim light, a piece of Astrid's soul preserved in indigo and gray. I lifted it down, my hands trembling, and found the safe, a small metal box embedded in the wall. The key fit perfectly, the lock clicking open with a soft thud that echoed in the silence. Inside was a stack of documents, bank statements showing massive withdrawals, emails to a woman named Lena, and a handwritten note in Astrid script. If anything happens to me, give this to the police. There was also a USB drive, its surface scratched but intact. My breath caught as I scanned the papers. Transactions to unfamiliar accounts, sums that made no sense for our modest life. The emails to Lena were cryptic, mentioning debt settled and a new start. My hands shook as I stuffed everything into my bag, the weight of it grounding me and terrifying me all at once. Each document felt like a betrayal, a piece of the life Eric had hidden from us. As I turned to leave, headlights swept across the yard. Eric's car. My heart stopped. I ducked behind a charred beam, my breath shallow as his footsteps crunched through the debris. "Freya," he called, his voice sharp, not the gentle tone he'd used in the hospital. "What are you doing out here?" He stormed into the studio, his silhouette filling the doorway, his breath heavy with anger. I pressed myself against the wall, the documents heavy in my bag, praying he wouldn't see me. He cursed under his breath, kicking at a pile of ash, then left, his car roaring away into the night. I waited, my pulse pounding, before slipping out the back, running to the woods until I reached the main road. I flagged down another taxi, my hands trembling so badly I could barely open the door. Back in Stockholm, I hid the documents under my mattress, the shawl wrapped around them like a shield. I didn't sleep, my mind racing with questions. Who was Lena? What had Eric done to Astrid? How long could I keep this secret before he found out? The city hummed outside, oblivious of the storm inside me, and I clutched the shawl tighter, whispering, "I'm doing this for you, Mom." The next morning, I met Detective Hanneberg at a cafe in Gamlestan, Stockholm's old town, where cobblestone streets and golden buildings felt like a different world from a nightmare I was living. I slid the USB drive and documents across the table, my hands steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. Hannah's gray eyes scanned the papers, her expression growing grimmer with each page. The USB held recordings, hours of Astrid's voice fragile but resolute, detailing Eric's debts to a local crime syndicate, his threats to fix things with insurance money, and his affair with Lena, a woman who worked for his creditors. He said he'd burn it all down if he had to, Astrid whispered through Hannah's laptop, her voice breaking my heart. I think he means it. Hannah leaned back, her fingers tapping the table. This is enough to move forward, but we need more. A confession, something concrete. Can you get him to talk? My stomach twisted, but I nodded, Astrid's letter echoing in my mind. Don't let him silence you. Hannah slid a tiny recorder across the table, showing me how to hide it in my sleeve, her voice low and urgent. Be careful. He's desperate now. Men like him don't go down quietly. Back at the apartment, I played the part of the dutiful daughter, my hand steady as I cooked dinner, my voice soft as I set the table with its stark white plates. Eric watched me, his eyes narrowing slightly, but he said nothing, sipping his wine with calm that felt like a mask stretched too tight. At the table, I pushed, my heart pounding so loudly I feared he'd hear it. Dad, why did Mom think you were hiding things? Why was she so scared? His fork paused midair, his jaw tightening, a flicker of something dark crossing his face. She was paranoid, he said, his voice low, controlled, but with an edge that made my skin prickle. Always imagining things, blowing everything out of proportion. You're not like her. You're smarter. You know better than to listen to rumors. He leaned back, swirling his wine, his eyes locked on mine, searching for defiance. And the fire? I pressed, my finger brushing the recorder in my sleeve, its cool metal grounding me. Was that an accident? He froze, just for a second, then smiled, a cold, predatory smile that made my blood run cold. Sometimes you have to destroy, to rebuild. You wouldn't understand. The world's not kind to people who play by the rules. My heart raced, but I kept my face neutral, nodding like I was still his obedient daughter. And Lena? I asked, my voice trembling just enough to seem genuine. Who is she? His smile faltered, his fingers tightening around his glass until his knuckles whitened. "You've been digging, haven't you?" he said, his tone soft but laced with venom. "Lena's nobody, a business associate. Your mother made her into something she wasn't." He kept talking, his words careful but damning, hints of debts, of necessary sacrifices, of a life he'd built behind our backs. I let him, my heart pounding, the recorder capturing every syllable, each one a step closer to the truth. When dinner ended, I excused myself, retreating to my room to check the recording. His voice filled the silence, smug and incriminating. Not a full confession, but enough to make my hands shake with something like hope. For the first time, I felt like I was holding a piece of the truth, a weapon against a man who'd taken everything from me. But as I hid the recorder under my pillow, I heard his footsteps in the hall, slow and deliberate, pausing outside my door. My heart stopped. Had he seen me flinch at the table? Did he know? I clutched the shawl, its green threads grounding me, and whispered to myself, "You can't stop now, not when you're this close." The footsteps moved away, but the fear lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Eric moving around the apartment, his footsteps heavy, his voice low and clipped as he spoke on the phone. I lay still, my heart pounding, the recorder hidden in my sleeve, its weight both a comfort and a terror. I called Hannah at dawn, my voice barely above a whisper, the city still dark outside the window. "I have something," I told her. "It's not everything, but it's enough." She'd promised to be ready, her team stationed nearby, waiting for my signal to move in. At breakfast, I played my role perfectly, my hair neat, my smile soft, the obedient daughter Eric expected. He sat across from me, sipping coffee, his blue eyes scanning me like he could see through my skin to the secrets I carried. "You're quiet today," he said, his tone light but probing. A fisherman casting a line. "Something on your mind?" "I want to talk," I said, staring into my tea, my voice small, carefully measured. "About us, about Mom, about everything." He raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips, like he thought he'd already won. Finally ready to be reasonable, he said, gesturing for me to follow him to his study. The room smelled of leather and cigar smoke, a space that always felt like his fortress, off limits to me and Astrid. He closed the door, the click echoing in my chest like a lock snapping shut. I sat across from him, my hands folded, the recorder on, its faint hum drowned out by my racing pulse. "I've been thinking," I began, my voice trembling just enough to seem genuine. "You've done so much for us. I need to understand why everything happened. Why Mom? Why the fire?" He leaned back, his eyes narrowing, but his smirk didn't fade. "You don't need to understand," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Each were a reminder of my place. "You just need to accept. Your mother, she made things complicated. Always asking questions. Always pushing. She didn't know her place." My stomach lurched, but I kept my face blank, my eyes downcast. "And the fire?" I whispered, my finger brushing the recorder, its cool metal anchoring me. He chuckled, a low, cold sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Insurance, a reset. You don't get ahead in this world by playing nice. Your mother never understood that. She was an obstacle." His words hit like ice water, each one a confirmation of Astrid's fears, a betrayal laid bare. I nodded, letting him think I was breaking, letting him talk. "And Lena?" I asked, my voice barely audible, a fragile thread. His eyes darkened, but he leaned forward, his voice low, smug. "Lena's someone who understands how the world works. Unlike your mother, unlike you." I kept him talking, his arrogance spilling out, each word a nail in his coffin. Then the door burst open. "Eric Lindstrom, you're under arrest for arson and suspicion of murder." Hannah's voice boomed, flanked by 2 officers, their boots heavy on the hardwood. Eric shot up, his face twisting with fury, his eyes locking on mine. "You!" he hissed, as the cuffs clicked around his wrists, his voice venomous. "You betrayed me?" "No," I said, my voice steady, stronger than I felt, rising above the chaos. "You betrayed us." As they led him away, I saw Lena outside, leaning against a lamppost, her eyes cold and unreadable, a ghost in the morning light. She vanished into the crowd, leaving me with a chill that lingered long after Eric's shouts faded into the Stockholm streets. 6 months later, I stood in my small Uppsala apartment, the green shawl draped over a chair, catching the spring sunlight filtering through the window, its threads glowing like a piece of Astrid still with me. The trial had been brutal, a relentless parade of evidence. Astrid's recordings, the documents from the safe, my own testimony played out in a packed courtroom. Eric was sentenced to life for arson and manslaughter, his smirk finally gone as the judge's gavel fell, the sound sharp and final. I'd sat in the gallery every day, my hands clasped tightly, needing to see him diminished, needing to know he couldn't hurt me anymore. His blue eyes never met mine, not once, but I didn't look away. The apartment was modest, a one-bedroom with bare walls and a single potted fern on the windowsill, but it was mine, a space I carved out from the ashes. I'd started a jewelry business, small but growing, crafting pieces inspired by Astrid's paintings, swirling seas and quiet forests shaped in silver and stone, each one a tribute to her. I'd joined a support group, too, stepping nervously into a room of women who'd survived their own nightmares. At first, I felt like an imposter, my story too raw, my scars too fresh, but their voices, strong, broken, healing, gave me strength. I began volunteering, helping women escape toxic homes, sitting with them through their fear, telling them, if I could survive him, you can survive yours. The words felt truer every time I said them, like a promise I was keeping to myself and to Astrid. Lena had vanished, her testimony traded for immunity. Her role in Eric's world left murky, a shadow that slipped through the cracks of justice. I still saw her face sometimes, in crowded markets or restless dreams, her cold smile a reminder that some truths stayed buried. But I wasn't afraid anymore. The fire had taken our house, my mother, my old life, but it couldn't take me. I'd fought for the truth, and though it hadn't brought Astrid back, it had given me something else, a strength I hadn't known I had, a life I was building piece by piece. On a quiet April afternoon, I drove to the cemetery, the shawl in my hands, its familiar weight grounding me. Astrid's grave was simple, her name etched in stone, the dates too close together, a life cut short. I knelt, the grass damp against my knees, and tied the shawl to a nearby tree, its green threads fluttering in the breeze like a flag of defiance. "I survived, Mom," I whispered, my voice steady, carrying across the quiet. "And I'll keep surviving for both of us." As I walked back to my car, the weight of the past felt lighter, not gone but bearable, like a scar that no longer ached. I'd lost a family, but I'd found something else, a voice, a purpose, a life reclaimed from the ruins. The rain began to fall, soft and steady, washing the world clean. I drove home, the shawl's absence a quiet promise that I'd carry Astrid's love, not her fear. What would you have done with that letter in your hands? The house is gone, but I'm still here, rebuilding one truth at a time.